and the shelter itself reinforces the connection between animals and biopolitics. The novel's protagonist, David Lurie, volunteers his time in a rural South African animal shelter. As with many shelters, when the decision to euthanize is made, he one at a time fetches the dogs out of the cage at the back and leads or carries them into the theater. So here Coetzee creates a subtle metaphor, turning the shelter, death, and its performance into a piece of theater. So within this theater, the mass killing that occurs has long been justified through the fallacy of excess populations and population control. So in Disgrace, Bev, she's another character, says the following of these dogs. The trouble is there are just too many of them. They don't understand it, of course, and we have no way of telling them. Too many by our standards, not theirs. They would just multiply and multiply if they had their way until they filled the earth. They don't think it's a bad thing to have lots of offspring. The more, the jollier. So the creation of what we can call these excess populations is a fundamental aspect of biopolitics survival as an institution. So in order to regulate the lives of the livable and exert biopower to its full capacity, we have to create these excess populations, right? We have to regulate them. We somehow have to get rid of them in order to have the livable populace survive. So without these excess populations, biopolitics would cease to function. There would be no way that it could sustain itself. So the sovereign would no longer need to regulate life because life as such would regulate itself. Every life would be livable in this sense. So biopower creates these excess populations by deeming them excessive and somehow disposable or somehow not worthy of life. And so Beth emphasizes this when she says, the dogs that are brought in suffer from distempers, from broken limbs, from infected bites, from mange, from neglect, benign or malign, from old age, from malnutrition, from intestinal parasites, but most of all from their own fertility. There are simply too many of them. So in this instance, Coetzee introduces the internal fallacy of biopolitics. Unlivable lives are not necessarily physically unlivable, meaning suffering from disease or ailment. They're simply a biological nuisance. So the existence of life becomes paradoxically the enemy of biopolitics, when in fact, life is what the system claims to protect at all costs. So biopolitics creates these excess populations that are literally sentenced to death as a means of other people or other animals' survival. It's a perverse life through death. So in order to more fully understand and appreciate the purpose behind the creation of these excess animal populations, I'd like to discuss post-colonial theorist Ranjana Khanna's article on disposability. And she examines the way civilizations create and dispose of bodies and the repercussions of doing so. So in terms of the animal, her theory on disposability provides a useful context for thinking about shelter populations. So she claims, there are 3 strands of thought that emerge from the term disposable: the throwaway object in production, the available income in reproduction, and the sovereign commandment over life, death, and sexual access. So the animal shelter incorporates all 3